my training as a woman, my personality, my culture, like all those things, like I have to undo most of it to teach myself how to start from the heart, what I feel in my body, and go outwards versus the opposite.
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Michael Franti, and welcome to this week's edition of the Stay Human podcast, as always presented by the mighty Gibson Guitars. If you're ever in Nashville, go check out their Gibson Garage. It's an incredible place, just full of history of, from the roots of Gibson's first acoustic guitars and mandolins all the way up to the very first electric guitar ever invented through today. And it's just a really amazing place to check out the history of guitars, and you can handle all the guitars there. That's the best part. It's not a museum. Like, you pick them up and play them. It's really cool. I'm super excited because I've got somebody with us on the show today who I really respect and admire, and who is just such a great voice and just a needed human in the music space right now, and activism as well. Our guest today is a singer, a songwriter, producer, and advocate, widely recognized for her impactful voice in the advancement of human rights since the celebrated 2017 viral performance of her song Quiet during the Women's March. Quiet became the unofficial anthem of the movement. It was named Billboard's #1 protest song, and it was selected for NPR's American Anthem series. Just recently, she co-wrote and performed the theme song Mystery of Me for the Netflix documentary Found, which follows 3 adopted American teenage girls embarking on a once-in-a-lifetime journey in search of their heritage. Please welcome to the podcast, MILCK. How you doing, MILCK?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
I'm such a fan of you as a human, musician, and activist.
Thank you.
This is, for years. So this is so great.
Thank you. Well, I'm stoked because, we've had a chance to talk a few times during the last couple years of pandemic, and it's been just such a crazy time. I mean, if you think about it, as I was just mentioning the Women's March, just think about where we've come from that moment where it was like people are hurt, upset, and full of fire, and let's go out into the street, and literally millions of people around the world marching at the same time, to no one can go out of their house. No one can leave, basically. No one can breathe the same air as other people.
Yeah.
But now, and then through, the Black Lives Matter movement and so many things that have happened, socially, economically. And now it's like we're on the precipice of potentially nuclear war and World War III. And, it's just so hard to imagine where we've gone in the last few years. And music has been a savior for so many people. I mean, for me personally, it's like it's my medicine. It's the thing that I turn to when I'm really frustrated and I'm really scared. And I turn to songs like your songs because they give me that voice out in my mind and in my heart. Like, I'm not the only person who's thinking about this shit. I'm not the only person who's worried, who's scared, who's pissed off, who feels like they want to do something but doesn't quite know where to direct it, And so I just want to know, where does this come from? This person that you are come from, and how did you get here to this point? And I don't know if you have anything to say about really what's going on in the world right now, but feel free to do that. But I really want to do a deep dive on, where you come from and where you're born.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. I feel like I think your live stream, you have artwork where it's like the hand goes up to a mirror and you make a heart with the reflection. It's really cute. And I've been thinking about mirrors a lot and how we're constantly interfacing with different humans that are just mirroring us back to ourselves. And so, you and how you are in the world, what you've chosen to do with your life, has been a mirror for me, and knowing, it's possible to be a musician and learn about activism, practice advocacy, and be in this space and resist the boxes that want to exist around us. I know, like, the journey of going from major label to independent, I'm, walking through that, and you were so gracious of having a chat with me when I was just like getting dropped by management and like thinking of leaving Atlantic and that whole thing. So thanks for that. And yeah, I think all of that, all of the transitions going from like industry and these big ideas of what should be to what actually feels good is very similar and parallel to what I think our society is maturing into. Like the human species is young. And so, you know, there's some biologists that have talked about how cells, when they were first like starting on the planet, they were actually really combative, and eventually they try to compete with each other to exist on this planet before anything else existed. And then eventually they learned, oh, if we actually like work together, we can create like bigger objects. And then cells started learning how to work as units. And you were talking about like potential World War III. I'm watching the documentary on Netflix about Ukraine from 2013 to now. And it's called Winter on Fire. And I saw someone posted about it on Instagram, and I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And, you know, it's been on Netflix for a while. I'd never heard of it. I was like, oh man, I really should watch this. And holy moly, Putin is messing with the wrong people, because they like, I didn't know about this, like the amount of organization that they did from 2013 and on is mind-blowing. The footage that they have to even share this story is also mind-blowing. I highly recommend it. And I actually got chills when I was watching it, because I thought, oh, we're, as a human species, for those of us who have technology and can stream video, I think the universe does want us to be exposed to what Ukraine did against their dictator-like leaders in 2013. Like the revolution they built from ground up, starting with young people, is like mind-blowing. So anyone who wants to feel inspired and like send love to the Ukrainian people, like that's a great doc.
I'm going to go check it out tonight.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times I look at artists, musicians, and I go, why do you make what you do? Like, why have you chosen this medium, first of all, of music? And then second of all, like, why do you make the songs that you make? And, you know, sometimes it's people, and I just, you know, I hear like incredible love songs, or I hear incredible dance music, or I hear incredible, you know, singer-songwriter. And very few artists, though, really choose to put their advocacy front and center in what they do. And it's challenging, because anytime you put anything out, any music, creativity, you put a Facebook or Instagram post up, you're like putting yourself out there to be critiqued, judged, ridiculed, ripped to shreds, canceled, like so whatever, fun. You know? And like, it's so artists, when they're just starting out, they think like, oh boy, do I really want to like put myself out in a way that's going to get me, kicked off the stations before I'm even on the stations, you know? And so I want to just hear, like, what was it in your family growing up? Just tell me about your family growing up, because I'm very curious of how you evolved to be the person that you are. So what did your parents do, and where did you grow up?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So my parents are immigrants from Hong Kong, and they were middle school sweethearts. I think my mom had a crush on my dad, and then somehow like conspired to have him become her tutor. So that's how my mom like got my dad. And
my mom and dad were very similar. My really? Mom was like a freshman, and my dad was like in his first year of teaching college, whatever class. And they went to this like tiny school with, a couple hundred students. And my mom was actually like his student. So it's horribly scandalous today. But back then, there was very few people around the farms where they grew up. So you didn't have a wide.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. So we have similar educational romances, I guess, tutorial romances. And so my dad always had this, like, he was like a soccer player, and he kept ditching school, and he was about to drop out, and his teachers were like, if you don't like get your act together, we're going to kick you out. And so he heard the message. Then he just super intensely started studying and realized he's actually good at it. And then so he started just like building new dreams. He's like, oh, I'm good at studying, and who knew? And so then he thought, I want to go to America. He had these big dreams. He wanted to live the American dream that he was exposed to. It's so like, yeah, it's what we'll get into the depths of that and how that impacts even now. Like this story my dad went through impacts how I learned about American history. And then when George Floyd, Breonna Taylor happened, it was like this big new learning experience, even as a woman of color and daughter of immigrants. It's like, there's a whole American history I wasn't exposed to. Anyway, yeah, anyways, I'll come back to that. We'll circle back. But my dad and mom moved here, and they raised me, my sister, and my brother. I'm the middle child. I'm like typical middle child. A bit of like I'm the more emotional one, the one they didn't really know what to do with. Because my dad was so disciplined. His story is really inspiring because he worked as a janitor, as a burger flipper. And people who took him in the Midwest, and helped hire him, even when he didn't have the right, like working, like permissions with his visas, student visas and stuff, like people took a chance on him. And, it was almost as if he walked uphill in the snow both ways, is like the joke. And he then worked his way through pharmacy school, then medical school. And then they moved from Chicago to LA. My sister is a really studious and smart, like child that really was built to fulfill the dreams that my father had for us. I think because my father had to, withstand the racism and the lack of opportunities and the scarcity of stuff amidst like really good people along the way too, he just had a really finite idea of how we were going to survive. And he loved me so much. And he was like, the way you survive is you build a hard skill. And you do that so society is served by you, and then they'll value you and you can live. And so when he saw I liked drawing and dancing and singing, it scared him because, it just wasn't practical in his mind. And my sister at age 16 got into medical school, like full scholarship, guaranteed admission. And she was and so I always felt like, oh, there's something wrong with me because I'm kind of like a tomboy. I'm kind of rebellious. I don't know when to shut up. But eventually I learned how to keep quiet because the culture then started training me, because I was like starting to get in trouble when I was like 10, 11. They're like, okay, this is not how a girl's supposed to be, like, And so I think as a kid, I learned how to silence myself so much that it just bottled up to the point that I needed an outlet. There was this thought of women with big eyes and small mouths in our culture considered beautiful because they observe more and speak less. And I was like, oh, shoot, I'm screwed. I don't know if I'm going to meet that standard. But music was a safe place. So like I would play piano, and I eventually figured out how to sing and play at the same time in high school. And I was like, oh, I can say all the things I'm scared to say away from the piano and say it all here. And I'm not going to get in trouble because there was some type of magic cloak that music would put over the words. And so I think I developed a habit of saying hard things in music. So music for me was never like easy, because I always went to it and I went in like to process the things that were so hard for me. Yeah. Hence, like most of my songs they're not about typical things that maybe it's like not a light summery breeze of a song. I love that music. I live on that music. But when I write, I think a lot of times I'm writing things that I'm trying to figure out. Yeah.
When did you start playing piano?
I started playing when I was 7. And I had an amazing piano teacher. Her name's Mrs. Mendenhall, and she marched to the own beat of her drum. She taught me how to write music right away. Like when I was 7, she was like, okay, this is a staff. She taught me. She saw that I could read music, but she saw that I was playing melodies. And so she was like, okay, you're going to have to learn how to express your ideas. So right away. So I have like old sheet music of like my clumsy, like fat music notations. Yeah. Yeah.
What a gift to have someone in your life at that time. Do you recall being 7 and already being that girl who was different from your sister, from your siblings, from, did you feel it that early at that age?
Absolutely. I felt, because I was so emotional, I think, and it was just not considered a proper thing to be so emotional. And so I always felt like I was doing things wrong. I was like, oh no, I'm doing that thing again. Oh no, I'm crying again. Like every natural thing I did, I seemed to get in trouble. And so I felt like, oh, I think I started to develop the story. Oh, I'm trouble. I'm bad. And that kind of like started a cycle that I needed to heal over time, and I'm still healing a lot of the times. Yeah.
So when you'd go to your piano lessons, was it something that you looked forward to? It was like, oh, this is like my little escape, and I get to go with this person who's super supportive. And was that kind of like feeding your, I don't know if it's rebellion or just like your ability to kind of learn to just get it out, whatever was going on inside?
What was so wonderful about my piano teacher's home is that there was just true love. She and her husband truly loved each other. It was the cutest thing. So my piano lesson was at 3:30 every like weekday. I forget what day it was, but every day at 4 p.m., her husband would come down with a glass of orange juice and make her drink it because she won't stop. She taught music until she was 96, 92, 93. She got her nails and her hair did till she was then. She drove herself. She was one of those like fierce women that could not be stopped. And so her husband ended up becoming my voice teacher. So he taught me how to sing operas when I was young. I was so lucky. And then he would make jewelry for her, and he would do like metal work, and he would write love in all these different languages, and she would wear them and show them to me. And I think that witnessing their true love did something to me, because it taught me that it exists out there, no matter how troubled I feel, like that exists and it's possible. So man, they were angels for me. They show me what's possible. And my piano teacher also, she was the type of woman who were like big jewelry. She didn't care what people thought of her. And I work on that, because I think I have that thing where I wish I didn't have this, but I do care what people think. And I do sometimes overthink those things. I wish I didn't have that.
Yeah.
And she was starting to get arthritis of the fingers, and she's like, it doesn't stop me. And she would rip on the piano. So she taught me a couple of things. True love is possible. And like, you don't have to be stopped if you don't want to be stopped. You can keep going with what you want as long as you're determined.
So that's awesome. What a gift to have someone, two people like that in your life at such a crucial time. And as you started to grow up, we all feel the pressures of adolescence. Tell me about what that was like for you, and what kind of school were you going to, and what were the things around you friend-wise that were shaping you?
Yeah. I went to school in this town called Palos Verdes, and it's kind of tucked away from Los Angeles, but it's considered the Los Angeles County. It's by the beach. So I've always loved the water. My school was like really academic and competitive. So like, it was kind of that like people are trying to go to Harvard and Yale, like that type of game. It was really high pressure and stressful. And it was a public school. So it was really interesting. It was like people would actually move to that town to go to the schooling system. There are lots of kids, not as diverse as I'd want it to be. There were actually a lot of Asian people, a lot of South Asian people, and white. That was like the main makeup. Everything else was smaller fractions. And so I did all the extracurricular activities, because I knew that if I had an excuse to leave the house, like one that would be accepted would be school activities. So I was like in dance, I was in martial arts, I was doing all the things because I wanted to feel free. Yeah. And then also my sister, because she was so academic, she took 11 APs in high school. So I thought that was normal. And I was like, okay, I have to take 11 APs. So I remember actually high school, I didn't sleep much. I slept like 3 to 4 hours a day because I was living two lives. I was trying to be me, and I was also trying to be my sister because I thought that's like the minimum requirement. You have to do it like that. And so I like my sister, like, it's just natural for her. She would get like straight A's, full scores on stuff. I would struggle to get like B pluses, A minuses. And it was not natural for me. And I think I had a lot of anxiety. I remember even like reading tests, like taking SATs, and the whole time I could hear in my head, like, okay, you got to do it. Was just like so much anxiety. I could hear like a chorus of voices. I couldn't even read the questions. I'd have to like read it 7 times over, kind of like that. It was just stressful.
Yeah.
So music became such a release. That's when I started like learning how to sing. I think junior year of high school, I like wrote my first song and played it at a coffee shop at school. And I felt this knowing. I was like, oh, okay, this is what I felt as a kid. Cause I remember when I was a young one, like 6 or 7, adults would be like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I had this voice immediately as like singer, but I knew that wasn't the right answer because I had tried that answer before and it didn't work out well. So I said doctor, or I said other things, and people would approve, like, oh, that's what life is. You silence the thing in you and then you say what people need. I know. And then high school, when I felt this passion, I was like, I didn't realize that eventually would return in college and become my best friend. Like, it had always been my best friend, but in college it really saved me and like pulled me out of academia into the world of music.
Yeah. I'm just curious, have you ever talked to your sister about this? About like just the way you both grew up different in the same house?
I have. My sister actually was such a big source of, she was like my mother in a lot of ways. It was interesting because I knew when I was younger, I was like, I have a choice to either hate my sister because she's making it so hard for me, or just to surrender to who she is and not take it personally because she's who she is. And I became anorexic when I was 14, just all the pressures and stuff. And my sister would come back from college every weekend to check on me, to gently ask me to eat. So I could see her loving me in this way that I needed. She bought me books. There's this book called Reviving Ophelia. It's talking about girls going through eating disorders. And I remember reading the book and being like, okay, I know what my sister wants me to do. So actually, I wasn't so deep down the rabbit hole, and everyone's eating disorders are different. But for me personally, I got to a place where I started trying to eat again because she loved me.
Wow.
Yeah. So she and I have talked about it. She's more, my sister's like really logical, very funny. She's very like mischievously funny. She's also not like, she says this, I'm like curious to see if it's actually true in the long run, but she's like, yeah, you have really high highs and really low lows. You feel everything, but she's like, I'm kind of more chill, like kind of like a more moderate type of wave than you. So she's like, I just don't struggle in those ways. And I also don't feel those highs as you do, you know? That's what she said to me before.
Did you believe her?
I don't know. Like, there's parts of me that believe her because like I'm watching her become a mother now, and she's like actually really level-headed.
Right there.
Yeah. She's actually she's so graceful, and I'm like, of course she is, but who knows, you know? Like, we'll see. It'll be an adventure. I'm ready for her daughter when she's a teenager, though. I was like, I got you. When she's 13, she can come to Aunt Connie, you know?
Yeah. When did you start to realize, like, because I know we've talked about this before, it's sort of like the intersection between like the personal and the social, the worldly, the universal, the political. Like there's these crosses, these crossover moments in all of what we do as artists, where it's like what's deep in our heart is actually playing out, and like you described before, mirrored in some way in the world. At what point did you start to really recognize that in your music, or did you? And did you start to ever intentionally write with purpose beyond just soothing your own heart or healing your own heart?
That's a great question. When the first song I wrote with my piano teacher, Mrs. Mendenhall, it was just piano instrumental. So I think I was 7 years old. that first song, she asked me what I wanted to name the song. And I remember I had seen a commercial with hungry children all over the world. And I was like, children are hungry? Like, I'm never hungry. And so I remember going to the piano lesson. She's like, what do you want to name this song? I was like, I want to name it The Most Beautiful Thing in the World. I remember sitting there in the chair thinking, and I was like, oh, I want to name it Healthy People. And so that's when I didn't know I was consciously doing it, but I was using art to create the world I wanted to see.
Yeah.
And then I got pulled away from it because then I got like embarrassed, like it was cheesy, too idealistic, not realistic, like hippie, people would use the word hippie and slant it negatively. And so I started like kind of protecting it. And then, writing with purpose, when I wrote Quiet, which became this like more social activist type of song, I was just trying to heal myself. But I have always been a writer where I want to create space in the song where people can sit in themselves and get cozy, like create a nice couch. And then when the song ended up becoming received as something, it meant something bigger to people, I started understanding the truth that Yoko Ono tweets all the time. She's like, inner peace is outer peace.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that, and my friends were like texting it to each other and be like, that's so cool, and Yoko Ono, we love her. That's when I realized, oh, this is the secret. This is a secret. This is when I honestly address my pain, like someone else is going to feel that too. And if I'm practicing my music skills, and sometimes magic will happen and the universe works through me and all the things mesh and then it resonates. So like, I remember after Quiet went viral, a bunch of people were like, hey, can you write an anthem for XYZ? And I was like, oh, I don't know how to write anthems for stuff. I have to really feel it.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's what I pay attention to. And then I really like soaring melodies. I love like things that can make a space feel really big and things that people can sing along to. And I think it was the Beatles. Was it John Lennon? He talked about how there's melodies hidden within words. I might have been Paul McCartney. I forget who said it, but I like doing that as well. Like trying to do as little work as possible and just like finding what is already there. Yeah, because it can create something simple and timeless. That's my hope.
My dad taught me about that, actually. My father, who was not musical at all, even though I grew up in a very musical family, he was the one person who was not musical. Although he did, sing in church, just, out of the hymnal on Sunday, and he had a really nice voice, but he just never really followed music as a passion in anywhere. Whereas my mom played organ and piano in the church. All my brothers and sisters played instruments. It was a big thing in our house. Except for me, I didn't play anything. I played basketball. But my dad taught me something. He was a wood carver. He would be a total rock star today because he was an epidemiologist. And but his passion was wood carving. So he spent every spare moment, even when he'd be at work, he'd be carving little ducks and birds and sitting there talking to students. He was super passionate about wood carving, and he would say to me that I would say, how do you know like what you're going to make, And he'd say, well, I get a block of wood from a tree, and a tree already has like this history to it where it's been bent and shaped and grown through, different moments of light, or maybe it was struck by lightning, or maybe a bird put a nest in this and it weighed down the branch, or like whatever things, maybe there's drought one year, too much rain the next year. And the tree gets shapen by that. And then you get a piece of this tree and you look at it and you go, it kind of looks like this. So I'm just going to like peel away what's already there, and then I'll refine it and buff it and polish it and shine and all that stuff. But he's like, it's already there. I already see it when it's there, and I think about that for my songs. It's like, what you described sometimes it could just be as simple as a word, and you're finding the melody that or the bounce that word automatically like innately has, and then you're finding that piece inside of your heart that's like, what is it that I'm trying to say? There's this book of things that I'm trying to say, but I'm just trying to like distill it down into one line that's memorable that people can sing along to. And most importantly, that I feel that makes me tear up the first time I sing it.
Do you get these instincts where you're like, okay, that's the line? Like, do you write, like, how is experience physical? You're an athlete. So I didn't know that you didn't play music when you were starting. So when did you start playing?
Well, I formed a little band in high school, and we played like two gigs, and we, just kind of practiced in the garage. We had like a paper box, like a cardboard box and a metal chair for a drum set, but then when I got into college, I started writing poetry, and I had an incredible teacher like what you described. This teacher, Father Huerta, who's a Catholic priest, and he taught me how to write and how to organize my thoughts. And the first day I went into his class, he says, everyone in my class either gets an A or you fail. There's nothing in between. And so I was just like folding up my books. I'm like, I never got an A in anything. Maybe I got an A once in PE, and that's it. And I was like ready to walk out. And he said, what I mean is I'll sit here with you, and then you can come in after school. You can meet me at a cafe on Saturday. You can knock on my door in the middle of the night. He's like, I'm a priest. This is all I do is just like teach, And if you show up, I'll work with you until your work is an A grade, and I won't let you turn it in until it's an A. So
what a guy.
That's what we did. And he taught me how to like organize, write a thesis statement, how to organize the bodies of a paragraph, and using, supportive sentences, and then a conclusion. And that was how I learned how to write songs. It's basically the same thing. You're writing an essay. You're just, the thesis of the song is whatever the chorus of the song is. And then you just write a couple paragraphs that support what it is you're trying to say. But the difference in writing and singing is melody. What you describe is, it's like the ability to take those words and then extend them, apply notes to them, put different chords under them. And it's like scoring a film. I'm actually scoring a film right now, so I'm kind of neck deep in this, but it's like when you see someone smiling and you put some sinister music underneath them, you go, oh, they're really not, they really have something, devilish in their head,
Yeah.
And so that's how I set out to make my songs, is I always try to find the chorus of the song first, because it's really hard for me. I've never been successful at backtracking. Like, I'll write these great verses and then go, oh gosh, I don't know
where do I go
chorus
from here
for this, and I'm stuck, and I spend all this time writing this beautiful poetry. And that's what I feel. That's where I find, like, because I do write poetry, and that's how I write it. I just write it free. But if I'm writing a song, that's the difference. I start with the thesis first, or the chorus.
Yeah, actually, that's funny, because I think I'm similar. When I first started to like try writing music as a young one, I was writing verses, and I was like getting all like poetic, and then I would get like stuck. Like, okay, where do I go from here? And I realized lately, because I'm like just falling in love with writing again after leaving like a lot of the big structures I signed up to be a part of, and now I'm independent. I just feel like this love for music returning.
Nice.
Thank the Lordy. Because it's weird to feel numb about our art. It's so weird. I felt like I was blind.
Yeah.
But
tell me about that a little bit. What happened?
Yeah. I think that I was searching for acceptance and belonging in the wrong places. And I think it's part of the pressure that I think my father felt as an immigrant to survive. I think he's worked so hard. And I remember hearing when we were younger, you got to work 3 times harder than everyone else to even get a seat at the table. And because he worked so hard, and then I made this left turn and decided to make art, we didn't see it as a positive evolution. Like, oh, Dad, like, you've worked so hard to the point now that your child can express herself and to make a living off of expressing her ideas. Like that to me is an amazing progression. At that time, it didn't feel that way. And so I think I tried to reach for shiny things to prove to them that I made the right choice. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, see, I accomplished this, and I accomplished this. And I thought I had gotten rid of it, but self-growth is like this onion that just like, oh, I thought I worked on this
that
part
keeps on crying.
Yeah, an onion that keeps on crying. Yes. And I think there's a part of me that's like, oh, I want to be one of the few Chinese women that's signed with a major label in the States. Because I had grown up, everyone telling me that if you're Chinese, you need to go to Asia, go to China and make it out there. You can't make it here. And I just had this thing. I was like, I want to prove them wrong. Yeah. And so, and then I wasn't looking at what I needed. I was looking very outside. There was a lot that I had to prove to myself. And I think it all came from an ache of wanting to be loved and accepted. Mm-hmm. And so as I walked through the path, the people at Atlantic are great. And those structures can be amazing for certain artists who understand how to leverage that. And, but I also I found myself realizing, oh, I have to be actually different from who I am in order to really succeed in this. Mm-hmm. And it's too much of a sacrifice and I'm miserable. Yeah. So I let go. I just because I was like, my shoulders are tense. I was like holding everything and I was like, it was so much energy. And then finally I was like, I'm just going to let everything fall. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to let my shoulders fall and all the pieces fall. And whoever really matters is going to stick with me. And a lot of my team left. And the people who stayed with me were my social justice, advocacy team, mm-hmm. Miley and Bree. They stuck by my side and just have weathered the storm with me. Very grateful for them. And now I'm finding the right people because I'm actually going from inside out. What do I want? I know it sounds so simple, but a lot of my training as a woman, my personality and my culture, all those things, really, I have to undo most of it to teach myself how to start from the heart, what I feel in my body, and go outwards versus the opposite.
Mm-hmm. That's the one thing that I've learned after all the decades of doing what I do and just being a human, being a father, being a musician, being an activist, being a business owner, entrepreneur. And it's the thing that I wish I could have told myself when I was a teenager, which is that your greatest strength is your uniqueness, your authenticity. That's your greatest strength. And the more that you can show up and be that's the one thing that no one else has. No one else can be. And the other day I was working with a friend who's a really, really high level marketing person. He's worked for huge corporations and doing their marketing and branding. And I was like, I showed him this logo that we were doing for our hotel. And I said, what do you think? And he's like, well, what do you think? Do you love it? And I go, well, I don't know if I love it, but it's okay. I mean, it's passable. And he's like, well, do you want your hotel to be just passable or do you want it to be fucking great? And I was like, oh, of course I want it to be great. And he's like, then your logo has to be something that you love, but also that you can't see it working for any other business. It can't be you can't say, oh, well, I could see a daycare using this, or I could see this being the new Nike logo. It's it has to be a logo that only suits you and it wouldn't work for anybody else. And that's when you know that it's right, And I think about that for music, it's my music, when I go and I sit and I write with other people, it's we'll collaborate. And at the end of the session, I'm like, this song that we did, it doesn't feel like me, sometimes we don't nail it, Other times I collaborate and I go, man, this person was somehow able to pull something out in me that I didn't even realize, or they were able to come up with some words or a melody that I'd never thought about that actually hits right to my sense of me being me, And
Mm.
I always thought it was the other way around. I always thought that if I was collaborating, it could never be uniquely me. But I've learned that
Mm.
through collaboration, there's ways that you can discover new things about yourself that you didn't know. And you could get this opportunity to try on different hats, different things, this, and go, oh, you know what, this one actually really feels right on me. You know, like when you go to a store and you try on some clothes and like 99 for I'm 6'6", nothing fits me. And then every now and then I'm like, man, this jacket, this I kind of look kind of fly in this. This thing feels really good on me. And you go, I got it, you know. And it was nothing that I made, you know, it was just something that I happened to try on. So there's both those things that I feel like we get from life. There's like what we are, what we experience, and then some of the things that fit in that we find this connection. And the more we do that, the more clear we are in that, other people see it and they go, that fits me like that old jacket, you know. That's why I feel like, you know, Quiet was that, like, you summed up what so many people were feeling in that moment. You know? And we tried it on and we're like, yes, that's it. That's what I'm feeling, you know? And it came from your uniqueness, you know?
There's so many gems that you just shared. So thank you saying that about Quiet. Yeah, it was like I didn't feel heard in my like micro home, and I think people didn't feel heard in the macro home, the country, the city, the world. And I remember when I wrote that song, dance music was really popular at that time. I wrote it at the end of 2015, and I actually kept it for a year because I was like, I don't know where there's a place for this because it's just a song for me. It's like, it's just I just needed to heal myself, and now my shoulders are more relaxed, and I'm so grateful. And that's kind of it. And then some people heard it and wanted to pitch it to bigger artists. And at that point I was like, maybe it's the end for me. So maybe I will give it to another artist. So anyways, that was a really interesting reminder from the universe being like, exactly what you were saying. And I tend to forget it and I have to remind myself. So thanks for that beautiful reminder. And I agree with like co-writing. I just wrote this song, and it's like the first song that's like been written by more than like 3 people. I think there's like 4 or 5 writers on it, which is like super collaborative.
Yeah.
The song came to me unfinished, and then we wrote some of it. I changed stuff, and then I wasn't ready for it yet. And I was like, this is cool. Something's drawing me in. And then I set it aside for a year and a half. And then I went on a mental health journey and got to a point and like I was stabilizing. I started antidepressants and my life changed. I have to tell you, like my life has like, I feel like I'm more alive. And all of a sudden I was like, I want to be kind to myself, and I want to finish those songs that I've put on the back burner that I don't think I'm capable of finishing. So I pulled that song back out and I heard it again, and I was like, this is me. This is me.
Yeah.
This is me now. I wasn't fully there. I'm releasing it March 1st.
Woo-hoo.
And
I can't wait.
Yeah. And it's so cool because it wasn't like I wrote this all by myself. It was like, oh, this is a community that wrote it.
Yeah.
And that feels like the vibe right now.
Yeah.
Like community.
You know,
I mean, yeah.
It's so funny because as a songwriter, as a musician, I've spent so many hours like in isolation, not just the last couple of years, but being alone for decades, sitting and writing and bearing my soul and tinkering with every word and every melody. And yet some of the things that move me the most in my life are massive collaborations, you know? And I was thinking all this time that the more that I did this, the more that it could touch me and move me and change me, then more it would change somebody else. But like, I love film. And you see like the end credits of a film, there's like 3,000 people that work on a 90-minute movie, you know, like not even joking. That's how many people are involved, you know? And yet those are the things that bring me to my most, you know, tearful moments of being moved by art, you know, and
Yeah.
all the acting and the lighting and the writing and the music and the editing and like everything that got you there, the bookkeeping, the accounting, the production, the money that went into somebody believing in that idea, to all come together to me sitting on the airplane just bawling my eyes out,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so anytime someone like, or even when I think of like, God, I got to really be doing this myself. I got to be doing this. I remind myself of film and just how many people it are required to all work together and have a hand in it. And it gets shapen. I'm working on this film right now, and the director will ask me like, and I'm just doing the music for it, but it'll go like, what do you think of that scene? Should I cut this part out? Should I extend this part? And I'm like, bro, you're the director. You've made like these films for decades that have reached billions of people, made billions of dollars, and like, why are you asking me? But and then I realized, well, that's why he's so great. He does ask random ask me what I think, and he does listen to it, and he makes those changes based on it. His gathering of intel from so many different sources,
Yeah.
And there's a real like humility to that. Beautiful. And that's I guess that's the other thing I realized over the years, is that it's actually, you think you're being self-inspired or something, but sometimes you might actually be that you're just being a little self-indulged or selfish, right, or self-centered, when you don't take that idea and go and try it on with somebody else and share it,
Such a good metaphor.
You can always go back to what you had at the beginning. You can always just go, I didn't like anything what we did. I'm just going to go back to the thing. But most of the songs that I have that were the most successful songs were songs that I took to other people, and they just added that last 10% that took it over the edge.
Yes.
That was like,
the finishers.
That was what it needed, to get it to be really a universal thing.
Do you feel like you like working with people who help you finish stuff, like finishers?
Or is it
all types?
I also feel like just that when I do work with other people, stuff gets done with more efficiency, because it's like I'll get stuck on part of it and someone else will go, I've got 3 ideas for that. But they didn't have the idea to start the song, and so they were kind of like, God, I was just sitting around waiting for an idea, and you gave me this idea, and now I've got 3 ideas to finish it, and that's what I like about it. They're like getting stuck. Part of writing doesn't happen nearly as much when I collaborate with people.
Oh, that's so deep. My friend started Beam, Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective, and he talks about, he's like, okay, there's self-care and then there's community care. He's like, kind of self-care is kind of, he's like, I don't really talk about self-care, I talk about community care, because within community care, there is self-care, because you can take pocket time on your own, and then we give to each other, we pull each other up. And I feel like it's an interesting time, because on social media, I want to create stuff that encourages people to love themselves and to feel their own power. And I want to do that for myself. And I also don't want to forget why am I doing that? Because I want to be better so I can show up for community. I think sometimes we can get lost on that journey, and sometimes it's kind of safe to kind of get lost in that self-care journey, be in our bubble, because we can control everything within our own environment, but we're isolating ourselves from the ecosystem. So it's like, that's a really good analogy. I think as a young writer, it's like, I want to write everything on my own. And then eventually it was like, yeah, it's so much more fun to write with other people.
Yeah. It's so much more fun to get stuff finished.
Yeah.
Get it across the finish line.
Yeah.
Hey, and that kind of brings us to our finish line here. I got one last question for you. It's this question I ask everybody who comes on the podcast, which is, what does it mean to you to stay human? What does it mean to be a human, and how do you hold on to it? How do you stay that way?
What does it mean to stay human? I think is to take deep breaths often, and to accept reality. Yeah, I think to be human is to accept my flaws and my desires and all of me, the shadow and the light. and to tell that story so other people don't feel as alone. Like, yeah, I think to be human, I'm not giving you one answer. I think I'm like thinking out loud. Yeah, maybe that's it, is like just being in process, being in process and being okay with that. Like, I'm trying to like let go of perfectionism and needing to be what I think, is in my head. Okay, here we are. We're there. She's arrived. She's late, but she's here. Is to learn how to live in the heart and allow the brain to be the heart's servant versus letting the brain be the master. I think I've lived too many years where my brain has led the way and it's not fun. Too many plans, too many like worries and trying to figure stuff out that can't get figured out. But when I'm in my heart, there's like a knowing and a presence that feels really right. And it's led me to the best places in my life. So yeah, I think that's my answer, is to continuously remind myself that my brain is my heart's servant.
I love that. And I feel like you live that. Hey, I actually have one last question. Where did the name MILCK come from?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. It's my last name backwards and my first two initials. So my last name's Lim, Lim. So I put MIL. And then my first two initials are CK because Connie Kimberly. So I wanted to take what my parents gave me and make it my own. I felt a little constricted by my parents. Like, there's toxic things about my culture and there's beautiful things about my culture. And sometimes when I wanted to evolve from the toxicity, I felt like a bad Chinese girl. Like, it's like, oh, am I like being bad to my culture if I'm like resisting these parts of it? But then I get to a place where it's like, I have to free myself. So I still have it, but it's become MILCK, and it's what women do to nourish the next generation, what we make to nourish the next generation. So it's kind of deep for me because I think that patriarchy in the Chinese culture is really intense. And so if we can take those beautiful things of our culture, we actually like kind of exude this like really powerful feminine energy. I didn't quite realize that's what I was doing, but the more I live with this name MILCK, the more I realize it goes deep, it runs deep.
Yeah. Well, it fits you and everything you just described there. So that's awesome. And way to be yourself, and way to honor your heritage, and way to be that powerful woman who's serving the next generations to come. It's great work that you do, MILCK, and we're all excited. People can follow you on Instagram and Facebook and all those good places. And your new song is coming out.
Woohoo! Yes.
Or is out by the time this
Yes.
podcast. So go do a deep dive on all her music and everything that she's been up to. Go check out the really super inspiring video for Quiet, and go check out the Netflix documentary Found, about American teenage girls embarking on their journeys through adoption, which is also near and dear to my heart as being an adoptee. So thanks for being here today, MILCK. Thank you, Gibson Guitars, for this week's edition of the Stay Human podcast. Peace, y'all.
Peace.